living in Europe would have agreed with that. So one of the things that I'm going to come to time and time again is to challenge us not to accept as the way it is, therefore the way it must always be. Right? The ability for we the people or any culture to actually assert and change itself is profound. Deep and meaningful change is possible. It has been proven possible. It will continue to be possible. Now, the second concept is legal personhood. You'll notice I didn't actually put out corporate personhood because it goes deeper than that. Any lawyers in the crowd or anybody that'd be willing to admit it? The friendly crowd, Ken. So Ken and I will say, so sovereignty means authority to govern, and legal personhood means that you have the ability to assert rights. In other words, to be a legal person is a profound concept, and we'll get to that through the course of this. The last, corporation. Can anybody give a quick definition? What's the root of this word, by the way?
Body.
Body.
From the Greek.
Literally,
corpus.
Remember, corpus. And the
Latin.
suffix, it's Latin, T-I-O-N at the end, means the state of having or to give body to. In law school, remember, Ken, a corporation is a legal fiction, which means it doesn't really exist. But we're going to pretend like it exists, and therefore, and here's another example, if enough people think that something is true and act like something is true, you know what just happened?
It became true.
It became true. A corporation is a legal fiction that we create in reality. And then the last part, or the last topic, is the distinction between public and private, and we'll get to that. Now, in the spirit of the truth-telling that I told you that I would engage in, I'm going to say this. The United States of America is not now, nor has it ever been. In fact, it was not actually originally designed to be a truly functioning democracy. And we need to say that, and I'll flesh that out. Likewise, I will tell you this, that today, the large transnational corporation, not just business entities in general, but the large mega transnational corporation, those entities are the most powerful institutions that are existing on planet Earth today. And they are not merely exercising power. They are ruling us. As surely as masters once ruled their slaves, as surely as kings once ruled subjects, unelected and unaccountable corporate CEOs of these huge megalithic corporations are making the fundamental public policy decisions that affect our lives. They are making the decisions about what our transportation choices are. They are making the decisions about what our energy choices will be. They are making decisions about what health care we'll get, or evermore, what health care we don't get. They're making the decisions about how to basically order society. Here's a quick pop quiz. How many people here are eating genetically modified organisms?
Probably all of us.
Say it louder, sister.
Probably all of us.
All of us. And here's the reason. Because in our public food supply, there is GMOs and it's not even labeled. So I would assert that this is just one example, but our public food supply ought to be a function of a public process. I'm not going to get into whether GMOs are a good idea or not at this point. Because there's a debate, and scientists might debate that, and we should be allowed to debate it. But I'll ask this question. Who made the decision to put those GMOs into our public food supply?
Corporation.
Monsanto Corporation.
Monsanto.
Yes.
Archer Daniels Midland Corporation. Pioneer Hybrid Corporation. I submit to you that what is clearly a public decision about our public food supply and how it ought to be produced and distributed, that decision, rather than being subject to an appropriate democratic republic form of government, and then a decision get made, instead it was made in private, behind corporate boardroom doors, and we the people didn't even know it was being made, much less were we allowed to meaningfully participate in it. And now, after the fact, the big fight is, can we please at least get it labeled? And we could go through almost any issue, any sector of society, and we would find these huge monolithic corporations are actually making those same kinds of decisions. Well, how did they come to this? Isn't this the United States of America? How did corporations get so much power? Well, in order to really break that down, then I'll actually ask, Michael pointed out that the word corporation actually comes from Latin. And that's because the first corporations ever created were during the Roman Republic, not during the Roman Empire. And so I hope maybe we'll come back to what happens when a nation or a country devolves from being a republic to an empire. Because that's probably an important conversation for the United States of America today. But I really want to be clear about, I think the genius of the corporation, and sir, the nice corporation, the idea of a corporation is actually brilliant. Because the genius of the corporation was used, the first corporations that we would ever think of today were used to build the road system. You know that famous adage, all roads lead to Rome? Those roads were built by and maintained by some of the first corporation, or the first corporation. The first universities were corporations. The aqueduct system, we've got some engineers in the room. You know that system to move water all up and down the Italian peninsula without electricity? I mean, human beings are very clever, right? There are solutions to all of our problems. Well, that entire system was designed by, constructed by, and maintained by a corporation. Likewise, the first hospitals, for those of you who mentioned healthcare, were actually corporations. Does anybody see anything in common about a road system, a water system, hospitals, universities?
Infrastructure and public.
They are public infrastructure. That is exactly right. The genius of the creation of the original corporation was to take private money in a voluntary way and put it to public use. Now, recognize, voluntarily take private money, assets, etc., and put it to public use. For example, if I've got the idea to build the road system, and I say, would you be willing to either invest in or give a donation to this system? I've got this great vision. Would you be willing to do it, please? Yes. Ma'am, would you be willing to give some money, sir? Would you? Say no.
Oh, poo.
No. He said, all right, well, I'll go to this. Sir, would you be willing? Maybe. Okay, so what would it take? What investment would I have to offer you? How could I entice you to give some money? You see the difference? See, taking private money to quote, public resources did not begin with the Romans, because the idea of just taking private money and using it is called a tax.
Right.
And now, if the Roman centurion comes and says, tax time, and Michael says no, do we say, okay, go on to the next person? No, the centurion puts the spear to him. Taxes are not voluntary. The genius of the corporation is to take private resources and entice them as a charitable donation, or entice them with a potential investment to put to use for some public good. And I'm going to say it again, I am not anti-corporation at all. I absolutely support commerce, and I believe that the corporation can be put to incredibly good things. But let's be clear, the current transnational corporation doesn't exactly operate that way, does it? That's because the modern transnational corporation actually has its birth not in the Roman Republic, but in the era of the 13th and 14th century of Europe. You know, the age of discovery. I have to put discovery in quotation marks because in the same spirit of truth-telling, let's tell the truth. Was it the age of discovery? Well, what were they discovering exactly? Africa, Asia, later North and South America? Newsflash! There were people living there. They weren't lost. They didn't need to be discovered. So let's tell it like it really is. The era of the 13th, 14th, and 15th century is actually the era of rape and pillage and plunder and murder. It's colonialism, it's imperialism, that is that era. And here's the kicker. The modern transnational corporation as an entity was created during that time period as an instrument of colonial conquest. The East India Corporation was created specifically to empower the military to conquer the area of the East Indies and steal the resources. Likewise, the Africa Trading Company, one of the first corporations. Anybody want to guess what the Africa Trading Company traded?
Ivory.
Thank you for not saying slaves. Say it again, James.
People.
People. Like, I think